Welcome to another edition of This F***ing Guy, the show where we select one f***ing guy making America worse and explain why they suck. I'm Erin Ryan, host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco, the other host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast. And in this episode, we're talking about the most terminally whiny member of the Supreme Court, Justice Samuel Alito. Depending on your point of view, you may think of Samuel Alito as one of many things.
A misogynist, a religious nutjob, an aggrieved man baby,
A bad faith gaslighter, a bigot, a slimeball, a bad hang.
a hypocrite, Clarence Thomas's work wife, a condescending Fox News poisoned dickwad, a scared, angry old man.
To summarize, Samuel Alito is an asshole.
That Justice Alito is an asshole is not a groundbreaking observation. Many legal scholars agree that Alito is an asshole. He's referred to as an asshole in so many places and by so many people that while writing this script, I had to keep a thesaurus on hand so that I had a readily available list of synonyms for asshole so this video wouldn't get too repetitive. And so without further ado, let's take a look under the hood of one of America's most powerful, yet complainiest assholes.
Samuel Alito Jr. was born on April 1st, 1950 in Trenton, New Jersey, the son of an Italian immigrant father and a schoolteacher mom.
Another Italian-American fucking guy.
Italy, the home of my grandparents, of opera music, the Roman Empire, and the nonas of several of the worst fucking guys in American history.
Alito was always a bit of a dickhead. As a member of his high school debate team, he would occasionally get marked down for making faces during his opponent's arguments, a biographical detail that would be made public after he mouthed "not true" during President Barack Obama's 2010 State of the Union address. History would soon prove Alito's little one-man lip-sync battle wrong, but we'll get to that later.
Alito earned his BA from Princeton University in 1972 and his JD from Yale Law School in 1975. He met a law librarian named Martha Ann Baumgardner. That's Martha and Ann with a dash in between.
Samuel and Martha-Ann got married and have two children who are now adults. We're calling her Martha-Ann because she, like Alito, sucks, as we'll soon find out.
In 1985, Alito applied for a job working for the Ronald Reagan administration's Justice Department. On the application, he boasted of his involvement in a group called Concerned Alumni of Princeton.
Ooh, what were they concerned about? Campus buildings named after slaveholders, Title IX violations, unfair treatment of university staff?
No. They were upset that too many women and minorities were being admitted to Princeton at the expense of children of alumni. White men.
A 1985 fundraising appeal sent from the group to all Princeton alumni complained, quote, "Currently, alumni children comprise 14% of each entering class, compared with an 11% quota for blacks and Hispanics," end quote. While there's no evidence that Alito's involvement in the group went any deeper than him simply being a member, the group made its intentions and grievances crystal clear while Alito was a member, up to and including the time he was putting it on a job application with the federal government.
Allegedly. I gotta say, Alito was 10 years out of college at this point, and it always strikes me as such loser energy when grown adult men are so preoccupied with how college students are living. Don't you have wives? Don't you have jobs? Don't you have kids you barely know? Mind your business.
Loser energy levels of fixation on college kids is a bedrock of modern American conservatism, and it has played an important role in Alito's continued sense of grievance about every aspect of life in this country not catering to his specific whims.
Alito worked for the Reagan administration until 1990 when he was nominated to serve on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. He was confirmed unanimously by the Senate and got on his merry way to being confidently incorrect about things nobody wants.
So here are a few cases that minor league Alito was judicially backhanded over as a circuit court judge. Writing a dissent in the case of Sheridan v. DuPont, Alito argued that victims of workplace sex discrimination should have to meet a higher standard of proof in order to prevail against their employers in court. The Supreme Court would later go on to reject that rationale in a case called Reeves v. Sanderson Plumbing.
In another case, Chittister versus Department of Community and Economic Development, Alito pretended that he thought that Congress never intended to require states to provide family and medical leave equally to men and women. It was pretty obvious that Congress did intend for parents of both sexes to be entitled to equal leave when they passed the Family and Medical Leave Act in 1993. But one of Alito's greatest hits is to pretend not to understand something that is very obvious in service of his own wacky ideology.
And the Supreme Court slapped Alito's reasoning down in 2003 when it ruled in Hibbs v. Nevada Department of Human Resources. So here's one that's really gross. 2004's Doe v. Grudy. Toward the very end of his tenure on the Third Circuit, This case concerned a mother and 10-year-old girl who were strip searched by police who were searching their home. Neither the mother nor daughter were suspects in the crime police were investigating, nor were they named on the warrant. The Third Circuit ruled that the police had, to use a legal term, fucked up by strip searching the woman and girl. But Alito disagreed, arguing that the police had every right to strip search that child because she happened to be in the house. Another judge on the Third Circuit helpfully pointed out that if Alito's reasoning was correct, the Fourth Amendment protecting Americans against unlawful searches and seizures might as well not exist.
And perhaps the most famous federal judge Samuel Alito boner happened in the context of the 1992 case Planned Parenthood v. Casey. That case concerned a Pennsylvania law restricting abortion access. The Third Circuit upheld most of the law except for a provision that would require wives to inform their husbands before obtaining abortion care. When the Supreme Court took that case up, the spousal notification provision was, again, the only part of the Pennsylvania law that the SCOTUS struck down.
But you know who wanted the spousal notification part of the Pennsylvania law upheld? Third Circuit Court Judge Samuel Alito. In a dissenting opinion, Alito claimed that the state mandating women tell their husbands before obtaining a medical procedure did not constitute an undue burden. His reasoning was that he doubted that any woman would actually be adversely affected by the law because the state hadn't produced evidence that women would be harmed. Besides, he added, women could just lie and say they'd gotten their husband's permission even if they hadn't, since the law included no enforcement mechanism. Basically, he thought it should be allowed to go into effect because it would be, easy for women to just ignore it.
But wait a second, Erin. Just because there wasn't an enforcement mechanism of the husband telling law at the time doesn't mean that the legislation can't go back and pass one, right? Or that a woman who lied wouldn't get in trouble.
Exactly. Alito was doing the Alito thing where he was pretending he was stupid and had no imagination for what anti-abortion politicians would do next. Furthermore, he couldn't fathom how the state forcing an adult woman to ask her husband's permission to acquire a medical procedure could feel like a violation. Why would the state need to mandate the husband's involvement in these discussions? Like, why only abortion?
Quiet, Erin. You'll give the Federalist Society ideas.
Sorry.
So after 15 years on the federal bench, Alito was called up to the majors in 2005 when President George W. Bush nominated him for the seat of Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who was retiring.
Originally, W was going to nominate his longtime pal Harriet Miers to fill the seat, but Miers withdrew her nomination when it became clear that she'd face some friction in the Senate. And that friction came from the fact that roly-poly right-wing money man Leonard Leo, oh hey, we know that fucking guy, wanted the seat to be filled by a member of his conservative Federalist Society and was applying pressure behind the scenes to assure his boy, Samuel Alito, would get the nod instead.
Alito's nomination wasn't all smooth sailing. Some of the senators were a little bothered by the fact that Alito seemed to be fine with cops strip-searching little girls who happened to be unlucky enough to live in the same house as adults who were under criminal investigation.
Some senators on the judiciary pushed Alito hard on his involvement in concerned alumni of Princeton. Alito denied that he knew anything about the club, despite the fact that Alito himself put it on his resume when he was applying for a federal job. And then Martha-Ann Alito was so upset by the implication that her husband was a bigot that she ran out of the courtroom crying.
Years later, the anecdote of her running out of the confirmation hearing crying would be repeated by Megyn Kelly, who said that Martha-Ann's white woman tears were brought up by Senator Ted Kennedy's sharp questioning. But in reality, Mrs. Alito ran out of the courtroom during this series of softballs from reliable softball tosser Lindsey Graham.
If you don't mind, the suspicious nature that I have is that you may be saying that because you want to get on the Supreme Court. that you're disavowing this now because it doesn't look good. And really what I would look at to see if to believe you or not, I'm going to be very honest with you, is how have you lived your life? Are you really a closet bigot?
I'm not any kind of a bigot.
No, sir, you're not. And you know why I believe that? Not because you just said it, but that's a good enough reason, because you seem to be a decent, honorable man. I've got reams of quotes from people who have worked with you, African-American judges. I've lost my quotes. Judge Hickenbottom, I don't know where they're at, but glowing quotes.
Glowing.
404 quotes not found.
If you can't tell from that aggressive glazing, it was clear during Alito's confirmation hearings that Senate Republicans who held the majority were really horny to get him confirmed. Here's how Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, who was a million years old then and is running for re-election again next year at a record-setting 1 billion years old, basically giving Alito the hearing equivalent of a gentle scalp massage.
Do you believe that the executive branch should have unchecked authority?
Absolutely not, Senator.
And do you understand that where constitutionally protected rights are involved, the courts have an important role to play in making sure that the executive branch does not trample those rights?
I certainly do, Senator. Each branch has very important individual responsibilities, and they should all perform their responsibilities.
And so clarify for me, do you believe that the President of the United States is above the law and the Constitution?
Nobody in this country is above the law, and that includes the President.
You lie!
Not true, turns out. I'm sorry, the blatant denial of a viewpoint that Alito clearly has held for decades aside, I've had interviews for retail jobs that I didn't even want that involved more hard-hitting questions than these. Not everybody bought the act, though. Alito only passed out of committee on party lines. Senator John Kerry called for the Democrats to filibuster the nomination and do whatever it took to keep Alito from being confirmed. Unfortunately, Kerry did this from a luxury resort in Davos, Switzerland, which Republicans pounced on and ridiculed. That is the most John Kerry scandal I've ever heard. He was right while windsurfing. He was correct in Switzerland. Oh.
As someone who worked for him, most John Kerry problem ever. I mean, like you said, he wasn't wrong. Despite Democratic opposition, Alito was ultimately confirmed. And that's how the first female Supreme Court justice was replaced by a man who's ruled in ways that indicate he doesn't see women as full human beings. It didn't take Alito long to pursue his greatest passion of making sure America's Constitution was applied in the most dickish way possible, while whining at every opportunity that he and people just like him were being actively oppressed.
Alito had some powerful help on the court at the time. Conservative legal giant and actual very large man, Justice Antonin Scalia, newly confirmed Chief Justice John Roberts, and Samuel Alito's new work husband, Clarence Thomas, joined to make a formidable conservative bloc.
Within months, some of the senators who had witnessed Alito's confirmation performance were having second thoughts. In the Washington Post, under the headline, "Roberts and Alito Misled Us," then Massachusetts Democratic Senator Ted Kennedy wrote that President George W. Bush learned from a failed SCOTUS nomination from the 1980s that he, quote, could still nominate extremists as long as their views were hidden, end quote.
Again, correct. Alito's focus on the court was always nakedly to act as a conservative activist and to use his seat to enact a radical agenda. But unlike his time in the Third Circuit, there was no check above Alito to overturn his goofy notions, nor did he need to directly face the wrath of voters if he handed down an unpopular ruling. During his tenure as Supreme Court Justice, Alito joined fellow conservatives to declare that individuals have a right to own firearms guaranteed by the Constitution, and then smacked down attempts by various states to regulate who could obtain guns and how.
Alito and his cronies dismantled environmental regulations and defanged agencies that were meant to enforce what regulations remained, and made it more difficult for employees who were treated in racist or sexist ways by their employers to sue. They gutted the Voting Rights Act in ways that made it easier for states to suppress the votes of non-whites, made it easier for police to violate the rights of the accused, and allowed a hell of a lot of people who should not have been put to death by the state to be put to death by the state. They ruled that presidents are free to do whatever crimes they want so long as said crime was in service of their official duties, and Alito, along with his work husband Clarence Thomas, dissented in Moore v. Harper. That case proposed a fringe theory that would have granted state legislatures the right to overrule the will of their own voters in awarding electoral votes. It, of course, gained traction during the Stop the Steal movement.
Not to mention gutting of affirmative action, etc., etc. But Alito would probably be proud of all of these things because, like we said in the intro, guy's an asshole. What he's probably less proud of is being pompously provably wrong on tape like he was in 2010 during the State of the Union address.
Oh, I remember it well. Citizens United, the case that declared that money is speech and corporations are people. So basically, the Constitution guarantees corporations the right to spend unlimited amounts of money on political campaigning, had just been handed down. Barack Obama was giving a State of the Union, and Alito, on camera, was caught mouthing, "Not true," when Obama pointed out that Citizens United would be a fucking disaster.
During Donald Trump's address to Congress in 2025, there was some stink eye from Amy Coney Barrett that I think really puts Alito's stink eye to shame.
That is true.
So maybe maybe Alito walked so Amy Coney Barrett could run. Believe it or not, it was once frowned upon for Supreme Court justices to get so emotional in public that they couldn't control their faces. And when this happened, Alito's face-making caused a bit of a scandal. But the bigger scandal is how confidently wrong Alito turned out to be. Anybody with 2 eyes and a short-term memory can tell that President Obama was right, since Citizens United political campaigning has gotten more opaque and much more annoying. We may not question the unchecked flow of dark money from anonymous sources into the coffers of some of America's least appealing men, people like J.D. Vance and Bernie Moreno, anymore. But there was a time that people like Senators John McCain and Russ Feingold tried to work across the aisle to prevent it from happening. But now, thanks in part to Samuel Alito, millionaires can buy elections like they used to buy racehorses and yachts, and billionaires can buy whole Supreme Court justices.
On to the gays. Alito's against them. In fact, one of his MOs is to act like giving other people rights is a direct violation of his right to be an asshole to those people and his right to not have anybody get mad at him for it.
Justice Alito went ripshit over 2015's Obergefell v. Hedges, the case that guaranteed same-sex couples the right to marry. In his dissent, he warned that gay people getting married would turn religious nutjobs like him into second-class citizens, writing, quote, "I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their homes. But if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools."
He loves that line so much that he was still repeating it in a 2020 speech to the Federalist Society and claiming he was right.
Hey, Sam, blink twice if you're not a robot. In 2020, Alito and his work husband, Clarence Thomas, wrote an op-ed about the case of a homophobic clerk who was penalized for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. In the piece, the dynamic duo described the clerk as a, quote, victim of the same-sex marriage ruling, which they said, quote, enables courts and governments to brand religious adherents who believe that marriage is between one man and one woman as bigots.
He was still beating that old drum in 2024 when the Supreme Court declined to hear the case of a lesbian woman who sued her employer over employment discrimination and wanted to exclude homophobic religious people from the jury. Alito agreed with the court's decision, but wrote a truly weird companion I told you so statement that claimed that he was right to worry that people who held traditional religious beliefs around, quote, homosexual behavior would be labeled as bigots. He also wrote, quote, the opinion of the court in Obergefell v. Hedges made it clear that the decision should not be used in that way. But I am afraid that this admonition is not being heeded by our society.
He wants to not only not be called a bigot, but he wants being a bigot to be cool. Like, what branch of government is in charge of that?
I worked in a few of them, and I don't even know. Alito seems to eat the most shit when he's apoplectic about God, girls, and gays. So let's dive into a recent incident where he pretended he didn't understand the plot of a children's book. Let's talk about a case that was heard by the court in April 2025, Mahmoud v. Montgomery County.
In this case, plaintiffs argued that parents should have line-item veto power on their children's education, or in other words, the right to strike individual curriculum materials they find objectionable to their own religious beliefs from their child's learning experience.
During oral arguments, Alito fixated heavily on one book, Uncle Bobby's Wedding, which is about a little girl named Chloe who is grappling with the fact that her favorite uncle is getting married and won't be able to hang out with her as much anymore.
The fact that Chloe's uncle is marrying a man is incidental to the plot, but here's a clip from oral arguments of Alito acting confused about what the book is about, seemingly thinking that the reason that little Chloe might be upset about the wedding is because little Chloe is a religiously motivated homophobe, and little Chloe's mom, trying to assuage her concerns, is akin to the mom and the book trying to teach kids that it's wrong to be homophobic.
I don't think anybody can read that and say, well, this is just telling children that there are occasions when men marry other men. Uncle Bobby gets married to his boyfriend Jamie, and everybody's happy, and everything is, it portrays this. Everyone accepts this, except for the little girl, Chloe, who has reservations about it. But her mother corrects her. No, you shouldn't have any reservations about this. As I said, it has a clear moral message.
Wait a minute, the reservation is about...
Can I finish, please? It has a clear moral message, and it may be a good message. It's just a message that a lot of religious people disagree with.
It goes on, and the lawyer arguing against the, allowing parents to, veto parts of their children's education is no, that's not what the book is about. It's
guys.
The lawyer points out, no, she's just upset because her uncle's not going to be able to hang out with her as much. And Alito truly seems to think it's because little Chloe
was a wreck.
has a religious based problem with gay people. This fucking guy is brought to you by Haya. Typical children's vitamins are basically a candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy additives growing kids should never eat. That's why Haya created a super-powered chewable vitamin. Haya is made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy additives, yet it tastes great and is perfect for picky eaters. I've got a 3.5-year-old. You know what she likes? Meatballs, pancakes, and Haya vitamins. Haya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets, especially if your child, like mine, is eating a meatball and pancake-based diet, to provide the full-body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste they love. Formulated with the help of pediatricians and nutritional experts, Haya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others, to help support immune system, energy, brain function, teeth, bones, and more. It's non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free, and everything else you can imagine. Every single batch is third-party tested for heavy metals and microbials in a qualified GMP-compliant lab using scientifically validated testing methods, so you know the product is safe and nutritious. Haya is designed for kids 2 and up and sent straight to your door, so parents have one less thing to worry about. My daughter calls these her Alphaba vitamins because they are pink, green, and yellow, and Alphaba's green and Glinda is pink. She's really in a wicked phase now. She is the pickiest child in the world, and she asks to take them, and it makes me feel good that we're going to fill in some of those nutritional gaps with Haya vitamins. And are you tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens? Haya now has Kids Daily Greens and Superfoods, a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids, packed with 55-plus whole food ingredients to support brain power development and digestion. Just scoop, shake, and sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious and nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy. We've worked out a special deal with Haya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hayahealth.com/guy. This deal is not available on the regular website. Go to HIYAHEALTH.com/guy and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults.
Because we're recording this during Pride Month, we can all have a little more Alito humiliating himself on the altar of being a homophobic prick as a treat.
Yay, as a treat. This Alito flounce comes from his dissent in the 2021 case Bostock v. Clayton County, which established that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act protects people from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. Alito hated this ruling and whined in his dissent that the case will allow sex pests to run roughshod through bathrooms and locker rooms.
But Sam's also got a new argument, folks. He further argued that protecting people from discrimination based on their gender identity or sexual orientation could violate religious people's freedom of speech by forcing them to use other people's preferred pronouns, thereby destroying the English language as we know it. So dramatic.
So dramatic, so emotional. Here at Hysteria, we agree that everyone should have the right to use the pronouns of their choice to refer to whomever they choose. That's why I'm sure Justice Alito won't get her panties in a twist as I spend the rest of this sentence calling her by female pronouns, as she and the founding mothers would have wanted.
Alito also went bananas over an emergency stay the Supreme Court issued in April 2025. The Trump administration was attempting to deport a group of Venezuelan men without due process under the Alien Enemies Act, tale as old as time, and the ACLU petitioned the High Court to block the deportations. The men had been told that they could be deported within the day unless the Supreme Court intervened. The Supreme Court granted the request in an unsigned ruling issued overnight on Easter Eve.
I love that they ruined his
Christ won't rise.
Easter.
Christ won't rise.
And his 420. So, least chill Easter 420 ever. In a dissent, also signed by his work husband, Clarence Thomas, Alito claimed the court didn't have the jurisdiction to stop the deportations and also argued that the Venezuelans, who were rounded up under a Trump order declaring any Venezuelan over the age of 14 an alien enemy, were too diverse to constitute a class. He also argued that, of course, the Trump administration planned to respect their rights and follow the appropriate due process. Why would the administration lie or fail to follow the rules? Could you even imagine such a thing, Alyssa?
Another Alitoism, pretending that he believes that obvious bad faith actors have good intentions.
Like if Samuel Alito were narrating a Roadrunner cartoon, he'd describe the part where Wile E. Coyote paints a giant circle on a broad face of rock as constructing a tunnel in order to help the roadrunner reach his destination. But if you think Alito hates gays and immigrants, well, honey, you haven't looked into what he thinks about ladies.
It is the opinion of this court that Samuel Alito is a raging misogynist. And we don't use that phrase lightly. Sure, Justice Alito interrupts his female colleagues a lot, despite talking more than all the other justices. And sure, he often singles them out by describing them with words he'd never used for men, like unhelpful or silly. And he even seems annoyed when fellow conservative Amy Coney Barrett doesn't do exactly what he wants.
Yeah, he talks about her like she's a malfunctioning lawnmower on the day he's trying to write "Stop the Steal" in grass in his front yard. But that's kind of everyday wallpaper sexism that most women are used to dealing with from cranky 70-something men. When we say Samuel Alito is a misogynist, we mean there's a molten, seething river of hate just below his words when he writes about women. It seems like he simply does not believe that women are people the way that men are.
Most of us are familiar with Alito's sneering, condescending, divorced from reason, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Association ruling, aka the 2022 ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and with the stroke of a pen declared that there is no right to abortion in the Constitution.
This would have been a great opportunity for Alito, a long-avowed anti-abortion zealot, despite his denials, to take the W. Take the W, Sam! But he couldn't do it. And that resulted in a series of high-profile L's, not just for him, but for the pro-life movement overall.
In Dobbs, Alito suggested that abortion didn't have anything to do with gender equity, and further added that women whose bodily autonomy was being denied by their government could simply try voting and see if that helped. Women are not without electoral power, he wrote.
In the ensuing 2 years, women would take his words to heart, delivering stunning electoral victories around the country when abortion rights were on the ballot. Republicans lost state Supreme Court seats they were expected to hold. A red wave promised by Republican leaders in 2022 turned out to be basically a panty liner's worth of red at most. Pro-life Republicans have lost abortion-related ballot measure after ballot measure in red states like Ohio, Montana, and Kentucky. Alito's inability or refusal to restrain his emotions has produced its own backlash from the left.
The Dobbs decision also backfired for the anti-abortion movement as a whole if the anti-abortion movement's main goal is to reduce or eliminate abortion. In the year after the Dobbs decision, the number of abortions in the nation actually went up significantly. This, according to researchers, is because women in states with serious abortion restrictions were simply traveling to other states to obtain the care they needed. And the rest of the increase in abortions can be attributed to things like economic, social, and environmental factors that would lead a woman to not want to be pregnant or have children, factors that the American right and Samuel Alito have had a direct hand in magnifying.
There was quite a bit of drama around the Dobbs decision, not just because it overturned two long-standing precedents and declared that women's bodies are basically community property. A draft of the opinion was leaked mysteriously months before the case was actually decided. This was a huge breach of protocol, and all of the justices were shocked that something like this could happen.
Right after the leak, some armchair sleuths thought that it was done by an operative on the left in an attempt to get people riled up. But the more time passed, a new theory emerged, that the draft was leaked by a conservative as a way to bully the other conservative justices into falling into line. The call was coming from inside the House.
And by the House, one theory goes, I mean the Alito House. Alito was the one with the most ready access to the document. Alito's the biggest prick on the Supreme Court and the one most prone to public tantrums and dramatic flounces. Alito is a messy Jersey bitch who loves drama, and his wife, who would have had access to Alito's technology, also sucks ass. This theory was given more credence when a former right-wing activist turned whistleblower revealed to the New York Times that he'd known in advance the outcome of the Burwell v. Hobby Lobby decision from 2014, another one written by Alito, another serious blow against women's bodily autonomy.
According to the whistleblower, Alito and Martha-Ann were at a dinner party with another family of right-wing activists and spilled the beans. The Alitos deny this happened, but emails the Times reviewed from around the time showed that it did seem like the activists and the whistleblower had advanced knowledge of the case's outcome, which ruled that Hobby Lobby didn't need to provide birth control to its employees as part of its company healthcare plan.
An internal SCOTUS investigation into the Dobbs leak never found the culprit, but most people who seriously follow the court didn't expect John Roberts to do anything. Roberts is like the overly permissive stepdad of the court who is actively bullied by his wife's wild teen boys from a previous marriage.
No summary of the career of Samuel Alito would be complete without getting into his multiple ethical issues. In 2023, a ProPublica report revealed that Alito had not reported a 2008 luxury vacation paid for by two billionaire megadonors. The trip was set up by right-wing money man and previous fucking guy subject Leonard Leo.
Alongside this report, ProPublica published a photo of Alito in a pair of duck waders alongside the aggressively litigious hedge fund dickhead Paul Singer. Alito is holding up a giant salmon that I would bet real money he didn't catch himself. Those waders are as pristine as a fair weather fan's jersey when their team makes it to the finals.
Alito denied impropriety via a whiny screed published in the Wall Street Journal opinion pages the night before the ProPublica story dropped. In the denial, he claimed that he didn't need to report the private jet trip he took, which observers say was worth $100,000, because if he hadn't been on the flight, the seat would have just been empty.
Wow. You know what? When you put it that way, in a way, the Sam is short for Salmon, Alito was preventing waste.
Yes.
But any idiot could see that Alito was as crooked as a barrel of fish hooks. Singer, you see, would in the years following the getaway have a handful of cases his businesses were involved in before the Supreme Court, and Alito did not recuse himself from any of them.
Nor, by the way, has Alito recused himself from a handful of cases where he had pretty obvious conflicts. In a recent Hall of Shame moment, Alito didn't recuse himself from a case argued by a lawyer who had interviewed him for the Wall Street Journal.
I know. It's hard to get through that line without laughing because it's like, wow, he just doesn't care about ethics. He just doesn't care.
Doesn't care.
Fortunately for Alito, the Supreme Court has basically nothing in place to make sure that its members don't flagrantly violate ethical standards or social expectations. Unfortunately for Alito, he's got a screw loose in his brain that makes him interpret any criticism as oppression. And unfortunately for us, Alito loves to bitch about what he perceives as unfair and oppressive treatment of Samuel Alito, and we have to listen to it. Alito has a Marty McFly-like trigger for being called out for being bigoted, corrupt, or partisan.
Alito even whines when he gets his way. After a unanimous ruling in favor of a Catholic charity that wanted to exclude gay couples from the placement of foster children, Alito complained that the ruling didn't go far enough to let religious people basically do whatever they want to whomever they want. This decision might as well be written on dissolving paper sold in magic shops, Alito wrote in his, angry concurrence.
Angry concurrence. The Samuel Alito story. When the Supreme Court upheld Obamacare back in 2012, Alito complained that the majority was considering public opinion in refusing to strike down the popular law.
But woe to the poor wretch who points out that Alito conducts himself like an appendage of the hefty and well-moneyed Leonard Leo apparatus that has been on a 5-decade crusade to swing the American judiciary to the right. Because if you complain that the court is acting like a way for the right wing to sneakily enact unpopular laws via judges who never have to face re-election, well, he'll probably give you a whiny speech about it and deliver it to the Federalist Society, which derives its power from powerful men who have convinced themselves that they are all victims.
And, of course, who could forget the flag incidents?
Let's dig in. In January 2021, days before Joe Biden's inauguration, several media outlets reported that there was an upside-down American flag flying over the Alito abode in Alexandria, Virginia. The upside-down American flag is typically raised as a distress symbol, but at that particular moment in time, it was closely associated with the January 6th Stop the Steal rioters that stormed the Capitol in a hillbilly attempt to prevent the certification of the results of the presidential election. Again, it is incredibly frowned upon for members of the Supreme Court to express their political allegiances in this way. But again, Samuel Alito cannot help himself.
No, he can't. When asked about the flag, the brave, strong man, Sam Alito, blamed his wife, Martha Ann, who was apparently involved in a dispute with a neighbor over the neighbor's anti-Trump yard signs. Alito tried to claim that it was totally fine for his wife to fly the flag as an expression of her free speech rights.
Sure, Jan. Well, a few weeks later, the New York Times reported that another flag was hung outside of the Alito's second home in New Jersey. This one was known as the Appeal to Heaven flag, which has been associated with ultra-right-wing Christian nationalist causes. It's also been seen hanging outside the office of certified freak Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Another fucking guy. Alito defended this flag by pointing out that the home had been purchased using Martha Ann's inheritance and that she had a right to display whatever flag she wanted. Lest you feel sorry for MDA, that's what we're calling Martha Ann, MDA, for being perpetually thrown under the bus by her chicken shit husband. Further reporting revealed that Martha Ann had flown the flag as a petty response to having to look at neighbors' pride flags. And that's why Martha Ann Alito is our nation's most prominent flag hag.
But the Alitos weren't done acting like total dickheads. Audio secretly recorded by Master of Disguise journalist Lauren Windsor at a charity dinner captured Justice Alito basically admitting to the thing he always acted offended over being accused of. Let's take a listen.
As a Catholic and as someone who really cherishes my faith, I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end. I think that it's a matter of winning.
I think you're probably right. I think one side or the other is going to win. I don't know.
I think that the solution really is winning the moral argument. People in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
Ruh-roh, Scoob. Not to be outdone, Martha-Ann had some comments about her flag haggery.
Everything that you're going through, I just want to tell you that it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's not okay though. It's not okay. It's okay. It's okay because if they come back to me, I'll get them. I'm going to be liberated, and I'm going to get them. What do you mean by? Oh well. There's a 5-year defamation statute of limitations.
But I don't know what you mean by gay, yeah. Oh, okay.
Come on, I'll get you. Come on. You know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag because I have to look across the lagoon at the Pride flag for the next month.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, please don't put up a flag. I said, I won't do it because I'm deferring to you. But when you are free of this nonsense, I'm putting it up, and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white, and it's yellow and orange flames around it, and in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame.
Okay, when you're free of all this the nonsense being a Supreme Court justice.
What do you mean, Martha-Ann? What are you talking about?
She is belligerent, malevolent Paula Deen, and Paula Deen not good on her own.
No, she's I would much rather be on a road trip with Paula Deen than Martha-Ann and her petty flag haggery. Here's the thing about Alito's whining. Either he actually believes what he's saying or he doesn't. If he's authentically whining and aggrieved, even after getting pretty much everything he's ever wanted in life and rigging the game so that people just like him will continue to get more than they've earned, if he actually believes that he's being oppressed when ethicists call him out for flouting the flimsiest ethics rules of all time, if he truly thinks that his guaranteed lifetime job that affords him virtually unchecked power makes him a victim somehow because sometimes people don't like him when he takes their rights away, if he authentically thinks that being called a bigot for doing and saying bigoted things causes equal harm as denying people their rights over their own bodies and homes, then he is a terminally miserable bastard. He lives a miserable life, and he will be miserable until the day he dies. But if he doesn't believe what he says when he complains about all of the above and more, then he's an evil parasitic opportunist, otherwise known as a liar. And we know how much Jesus loves liars.
Almost as much as he loves kicking immigrants out of the country and hurting the poor. Look, I've thought about this, and I think there's no reason he can't be a little bit of both.
Okay, Alyssa, using our new fucking guy matrix, where does Samuel Alito fall?
So, Erin, I'm going to go hard scheming sociopath.
Okay. He's not reckless dumbass. He's on the scheming sociopath end of things.
Scheming sociopath since his days at Princeton. And I'm going to go with opportunist.
Yeah.
I think, right? What do you think?
I think that he's right in the middle of opportunist and true believer.
Yeah.
Just like you said, he kind of believes that he's aggrieved and kind of knows that he's not. But I also think he's a scheming sociopath.
Scheming, so 100%.
Well, that's it for this episode of This Fucking Guy. If you like what you just watched, please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Listen to Hysteria every Thursday morning and share with your friends.
And if you have ideas for other fucking guys we should be covering, leave your ideas in the comments.
A programming note for fucking guy scholars. This episode completes what you could look at as a loose trilogy of the worst fucking guys of the American judicial system.
Once you're done with this episode, you should check out our episodes on Leonard Leo and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Leonard Leo. Now that's an impossible FMK lineup.
We'll see you next time.